Hello, my name is Maureen Brennan. I'm a technical advisor of the Federal and State Grants Unit here at the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority. This is one of a series of very brief webinars that we're recording and posting alongside the R3 Notice of Funding Opportunity on March 1st, 2024. The idea behind these brief trainings is to give NOFO applicants an idea of the authority grant processes and also to highlight some important issues that you'll need to consider as you craft your NOFO application. So today's session is on subcontracts. Let's get started. We just have three things on the agenda. We're going to talk about the difference between a subaward and subcontract and why that difference matters. And then we're going to provide a list of additional information that's available to you. So let's start with the difference between a subaward and a subcontract. So this is what the authority policy says regarding subawards and subcontracts. It says, in general, if the entity is performing a part of the federal or general revenue program, it's likely to be a subrecipient. If the entity is providing services incidental to the purpose of the award, the agreement is likely to be a subcontract. Let's see what that means in practical terms. So here are some characteristics of a subcontract. A subcontract provides goods and services within normal business operations. It provides similar goods or services to many different purchasers. It normally operates in a competitive environment, and it provides those goods and services supporting the funded program. Common examples of subcontracts are utilities, such as the phone and the internet, and personal and professional services contracts, like the lease for your program staff, contractual trainers that you may bring in, the accounting service that you may hire, or advertising that you may do for your program. When we're determining whether we have a subcontract or a subaward, there are really two critical questions. Does the entity provide services to the grantee agency or provide direct services to the program participants? Second question is the performance of the entity reflected in the grant goals and objectives and performance measures? When we ask the question of if the services to the grantee are provided, or if the service is provided to the grantee or provided to program participants, if the services are provided to the grantee agency, they're likely to be subcontracts. For instance, your accounting service. That's a necessary service, but it is provided to the grantee agency and not to the program participants. If we ask that same question and the direct services are provided to the participants, then that's likely to be a subaward. For example, if your partner agency is providing job training for teens, and that complements the job training your agency is providing to young adults, they're providing services to the program participants. So that agency is likely going to be treated as a subaward. And for that second question, is the performance reflected in the grant goals, objectives, and performance measures? If the answer is no, it's likely a subcontract. So your accounting service, important though it may be to your program, its work is not reflected in the grant goals, objectives, and performance measures that are listed in your grant agreement. However, if the question is yes, then it's likely to be a subaward. So that partner agency who's doing part of the work that is the overall mission of the program, that training for youth, then their work is going to be reflected in the grant objectives and performance measures. So that's a subaward. When the services has characteristics of both subaward or subcontract, and there have been a couple of times when we've run across a service like that, the final determination of whether we treat that service as a subaward or subcontract is always made by our legal office, by the Office of General Counsel. And the way they make that determination is that they look at the characteristics of that service and the preponderance of whether it's of characteristics will determine whether it's determined as a subaward or subcontract. You may be wondering why this makes a difference. So subawards and subcontracts at the authority have different components. There are different approval steps, and there's different grantee management responsibilities for subcontracts and subawards. So let's look at the subcontract components. First of all, we have to look at procurement. Subcontracts are subject to procurement rules requiring open and competitive selection of vendors. Now, as I said, R3 really does emphasize the development of collaborative programs. If your application names a collaborative partner, you've got an established relationship with another agency, and they're going to be providing a key piece of the program that you've applied for. But that's an established relationship, and you're naming them in the application, then we do not have to go through a competitive process. However, subawards are subject to the competitive procurement as well, just as your hiring new staff would be subject to a competitive process, right? And so if you do not identify your subaward partners in your application, but you have to identify them after the program period has begun, then we would ask you to do a competitive process. But subcontracts are always subject to competitive selection. Let's look at the different processes for different kinds of contracts. Your rent and utilities, we're not going to issue an RFP for electrical service. First, you're going to determine your needs. You're going to obtain, 3 bids. You're going to see if there are multiple, electrical service providers, and you're going to retain records of those bids, and that will demonstrate the reason that you went with the provider that you did. For contractual staff, it's going to be a little different. It's you do have to undertake an open and competitive hiring process. You can't just hire somebody that you know. You have to make sure that that person that you hire is the best choice for the job. So how are you going to do that? You're going to define the job requirements and the hiring criteria. You're going to post that job opening. You're going to retain records of the applicant qualification and the interviews that you conduct, and execute a written employment contract. If you're procuring programs and services, then you're going to want to issue an RFP, a request for proposal. So you're going to first submit a draft RFP for the authority review and approval. Once you have our approval, you're going to post the RFP. You're going to review and rank the RFP submissions. You're going to submit a draft RFP subcontract to the authority for our review and approval. And once you have our approval, you'll provide the authority a copy of that executed subcontract. So, oops. In that RFP, we're going to be looking to see that it details the programs or services that are required and invites your applicants to describe their plan of how the services will be provided, the qualifications of the applicant agency to provide that service, and how much it's going to cost to provide that service. Let's see if you're going to issue an RFP for an accounting services, for instance. You would maybe say that you need a team of the 3 accountants. You want them to have certain qualifications, and that they're going to, they're going to tell you how much they're going to charge on an hourly basis, and the total cost. If you're going to procure equipment, it's not an RFP that you're going to issue. You're going to issue an invitation for bid, because RFPs rank the successful applicant based on the quality of the overall plan. IFBs just look at 2 things: did the bid actually meet the minimum requirements that we specified, and what's the lowest cost? So you're going to detail the equipment specifications. That's the most important part of an IFB, and the criteria for selections. Typically, it's low cost. So your bidders will be describing the equipment they'll be able to provide, the cost of the equipment, and the delivery date for that equipment. So the process for an IFB is you're going to submit the draft IFB to the authority for review and approval. You're going to post the IFB. You're going to review and rank the bids, submit the draft contract for authority review and approval, and then provide the authority with the executed subcontract. Just a note about timing. Subcontracts cannot be submitted for the authority approval unless we have the grant agreement that, that it will be supporting. So we can't look at that subcontract without the context of the actual grant agreement. So that means that that's going to happen after you've gone through the negotiation phase with your grant. So RFPs and IFBs must be publicly posted for a minimum of 15 days, and you should minimally allow 2 weeks for the authority to review and approve RFPs, IFBs, and subcontracts. So that's a quick look into the subcontract process at the authority and some things that you should be paying attention to if you intend to have some subawards or subcontracts in your agreement, in your proposal rather. Here's the full list of the RFP R3 NOFO recordings that we've made available. If you have any questions about the content of this session, any of the sessions, or the NOFO, I encourage you to use the NOFO Q&A to submit your questions. We do respond to all of the questions, and we post the questions and their answers on a regular basis on the NOFO website. So thanks for joining me.